Hi, I'm Shannon Savard, and I will be presenting opening and closing scenes, introductions and conclusions. So the article that I've chosen to share with you is called Prologues to What is Possible, Introductions as Meta-Discourse by Philip Arrington and Shirley K. Rose. And what they mean as meta-discourse is basically it's text about text and text about context is how these two define introductions, which is often what students find so difficult about writing introductions in the first place, is that they have to think about already what they're about to write and sometimes what has already been written. One quote that particularly stood out to me was that an introduction resembles a prelude in music or the prologue of a drama, meaning that if you really think about it as the prologue of a drama, it's not necessarily part of the play. It's the part that's before the actual play starts. For example, the prologue of Romeo and Juliet, two households both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, they're giving you context. However, the action of the play hasn't started yet. The work has not begun to be done. So I think what's so difficult about preparing an introduction is that it's not exactly a part of the actual meat of your paper, of the work that you're doing. So you have to already know where you're going. So I guess the question is, why should we start writing there? I like to think of introductions as kind of a roadmap for your paper, as in it points you in the direction that the paper is about to go without doing the work of the paper just yet. So, you got your intro, where you're thinking about what's going to happen in the body of your paper, where all the work happens. Then you move on to the conclusion, which has always been my least favorite part of writing papers, and I've never quite known how to give advice as to how to approach them. But I checked out the University of North Carolina Writing Center, and their approach was basically to boil down to a few words, to synthesize, not summarize. So rather than restating all of the points that you have made, you synthesize them and combine them and show how they're interconnected and kind of take them away. So another point that Arrington and Rose bring up with the problem with writing introductions, I think it applies to conclusions as well, is the problem of authority, because writing the introduction requires students to, as Rose and Arrington say, define their situation, which in an academic context isn't always the easiest thing to do. They say academic writing requires students to assume an authoritative role to create at least the illusion of authority and interest as they write about the subjects that they've studied. And breaking that down visually, you got you've got the writer of the original text. Teacher teaches whatever the writer, the ultimate authority on the subject, has written. Teacher teaches that to the student. However, in an academic context, we ask the student to become the writer and the ultimate authority, and that's where the disconnection kind of lies, is that like reclaiming of that authority and finding that kind of voice in order to have confidence in your own ideas and to own them. In my meetings, I've had this problem a few times of students not really having much confidence in what it is that they're trying to say, despite them having good ideas. I'll ask them to talk through their ideas with me, and then when I repeat the idea back to them, they'll say, "That's such a great idea," but all I've done is just restate the idea without a question mark at the end of it. So I guess my question to all of you is, how can we help students assume that authority and own their ideas? How can we as writing colleagues help them to do that? And my second question is, how do you approach introductions and conclusions? And that is all. I will send you a link with some activities and suggestions as to some of the ways that I get started with introductions and conclusions.